Rome, the eternal city, where all roads lead to it, where Rome is master to all and all our enemies are defeated, the Carthaginians grounded into the dirt and sprinkled with salt, the Gauls subjugated and tamed like the barbarian beasts they are, and the Parthians hiding in the desert on the fringes of civilization. All bow before Rome. This is what 12-year-old me thought when I had just completed a world domination campaign in Rome Total War. Rome Total War is a real-time strategy game released in 2004. The simple premise of the game is that you command an army to fight another army with various factions to choose from, all with different and unique units from classical antiquity, all in a 3D perspective. You can choose to command an army of Romans against Gauls or Britons versus Germanics. The choice is yours. The game has 5 modes to enjoy: the tutorial, campaign mode, where you take control of a faction and through various actions conquer to reach an objective; historical battle, take command of an historical army from a specific battle in time, choose from Hannibal Barca's tactical victory at Lake Tresemere to the Roman disaster at Teutoburg Forest; custom battle, where you choose any faction with limited or unlimited funds and have up to 6 factions or 6 teams of the same faction fight on any map, from the Egyptian desert to the plains of Albion, with variations like a river battle on a narrow bridge or a siege battle with different level of defences, and finally, quick battle, in which the computer randomly sets up a battle for you. I love this game. It further inspired my passion for history, and what's interesting about Rome Total War is that it released at a time when the genre of ancient Greek and Roman history were experiencing a renaissance in popular culture, thanks to the film Gladiator, which reinvigorated public interest. And side note, Gladiator has one of the best soundtracks in film history. At the time of Rome's release, a show popped up on our television screen simply called HBO's Rome, which followed the end of the Roman Republic and the start of the Roman Empire. All of these shows and games left a deep appreciation and curiosity in me for Roman history, and I first picked up Rome Total War at my local game shop back when PC games were on disc. The convenience of Steam, long may it reign. At the time I had a laptop which struggled to play the game, yet I persevered because I could see what it looked like on a fully decked, at the time, computer. Because Rome Total War wasn't just a video game, oh no, it was used in a BBC television show called Time Commander, and this show started even before the game released publicly. Quite an influence from the outset. So Rome Total War was now part of this invigorated genre. Oh, and take a shot every time I say Rome Total War, because I'll be saying it a lot. Rome Total War was developed by the Creative Assembly, which is a British company that would later be acquired by Sega. Sorry. Sega! The Creative Assembly had been making games since the late 1980s for other companies such as EA. Rome Total War was the company's 3rd game in the Total War series, and the first one using 3D graphics. But for now, I will break down each section into parts, so first, let's look at the prologue. The prologue itself is a short campaign, where you learn the basics of the game, from the campaign map management to running your faction, and the battle mechanics. Fairly simple stuff. The game also introduces you to 2 advisors, one for the campaign map and one for the battles. The campaign advisor is called Victoria, a very sly way of suggesting that the goddess of victory is advising you, and the battle advisor is called Centurion Marcus, a Roman legate. These 2 would explain everything for you, which can be a bit repetitive to long-time players, but you can limit advice or turn it off, which is nice. Their portraits will glow when they have something to say, or if it's vitally important, like for example if your cavalry are about to charge spearmen head-on, they will speak out. I still enjoy listening to them from time to time. And that's the prologue. The Imperial Campaign, the main part of the game, which to start off with, you can only choose 3 factions to play as, and of course, as it's called Rome Total War, you can play as 3 different Roman factions/families. The main difference between them is a colour scheme, so you can choose whether your legions look fabulous in Roman red, gorgeous Greek green, or even blue bombastic Scipio. The only difference is the choice of gladiator and a few warships, which become redundant when a certain unit appear later in the game. You can unlock the other factions by beating them in the campaign, which can be done through one world domination playthrough, or alternatively, you can become a hacker man and go into the files of the game and edit the unlockable factions on the notepad to be unlocked, which includes factions you're not really supposed to play as, such as the rebels. But at the base start of the game, each faction you're supposed to play as has a short description, which involves a short history of the faction and the challenges they'll have to face. For example, the Julii have to face the might of the Gauls in the north of Italy, whilst completing missions for the Roman Senate, whereas the Britons can use the sea as a natural barrier while attacking the mainland of Europe. And I have to give credit to the developers in this description box. Simply mentioning that Celt is an umbrella term for quite different groups of people, as the line, "the Britons have their own sophisticated culture," helps differentiate. Too often, I see groups of different people, like the Celts and others, being thrown into a simple group, so applauses for that. Hovering over each faction icon will give you a short description and summary of the faction's unit's strengths and weaknesses. So the Romans have strong infantry and auxiliary troops but rather limited cavalry, whereas the Parthians have strong cavalry and horse archers but weak infantry. Each faction is different, which brings a great amount of replayability. Will you try to conquer the world as the Greeks like Alexander, or do you lead your Carthaginian troops over the Alps like Hannibal? The choice is yours. The map screen shows the world you are about to enter, from North Africa to the steppes. The options on the left change certain aspects in the campaign, from advice level given to the battle and the campaign difficulty. The arcade-style battles is a weird one for me. It makes the game worse. I'll talk about battles later, but the game has certain mechanics in it that the arcade style takes away, and in the 18 years of playing this game, I've never once used it, because I know it would make the game worse to play. This is just a small critique of an otherwise perfect game. The management or settlements option lets the game control each province, so it acts as a governor for you, choosing what buildings to construct or what units to recruit, etc. Again, I've never used it, but it can be useful for when your empire is a vast beast. Follow AI characters is basically where, when your turn ends, the game will follow the movement of each AI faction that are within your sight, which is handy if you've got multiple enemies to keep track of. The no battle time limit means nobody leaves the battlefield until someone retreats or all the enemies are dead. All fights are timed at 60 minutes, which is more than enough, unless you're trying to remake the Siege of Troy. And finally, for this part, the short campaign. The original goal is to become the supreme ruler of Rome and control 50 cities. The short version changes depending on which faction you pick. The Julii short campaign is to hold 15 cities and outlast or destroy the Gauls. When you start on whichever faction you picked, an intro will play for that faction. I'm not going to show them all because I don't want this video to be 5 hours long, so I'm just going to show you the best one, the Julii one.
I hate Gauls. My grandfather hated them too, even before they put out his eyes. Did you think I'd be out here on the frontier without good reason? Yes, Rome needs a strong frontier. No, Rome doesn't need unwashed barbarians at her gates. So, that's why I'm here. The leader of the Julii, to bring Roman order to stinking Gauls. Revenge? That'd be good too. This war against the Gauls won't last long. And when it's done, I've got plans. This is all about power. Power in Rome. Going down that road means dealing with all my rivals. The Senate, the Greeks, those Carthaginian elephant riders. The Scipii and the Brutii families, too. After all, the man who controls Rome rules the world. And one day, I will be emperor.
I'm sure his grandfather's grandfather will hear about this. After the campaign's opening sequence, the game starts us at the chosen faction's starting position, where you can choose to explore the map. But of course you can't see everything. The fog of war is at play. Your cities, your agents, your navy and your armies all have a line of vision. Your advisor will explain all of this to you if you click on her. And by the way, the voice acting is top notch from this actor.
You can move your spy by right-clicking on any part of the highlighted area. Spies can only carry out one mission each turn. Right-click on an army, character or settlement belonging to a rival faction to discover secret information.
Listening to her feels like listening to a knowledgeable aunt explaining something to you, and it's a joy listening. One of the most important parts to look at in your cities is your income, because nothing drives war and conquest like money and resources. All green is good, baby. Rome Total War features your typical interface for region management. You've got your income, public order, population growth. You can also set the settlement to auto-manage, which sort of makes the selection a bit pointless in the campaign menu. Of course, the best part of this menu is the tax rate. Woo, taxes. But seriously, it's an easy to manage system which gets the basics right. And remember, this was back in 2004, before shitty pre-order bonuses and pre-ordering game that didn't work on release day and needed a day one patch. Sorry, off topic. On this menu screen there are some cool stuff on here. You can ask the advisor what to build first, and she'll give you an answer with a reason.
It would be a sound strategy to build a shrine to Ceres in this settlement. This shrine grants loyalty and fertility benefits to the settlement.
You can see what potential future buildings will look like and what they unlock. There are also 3 options for certain shrines or temples, which bring different effects. Setting your tax level also affects your population growth, so if you have a mega city with thousands of civilians, it's worth increasing to get extra revenue for a time, whereas low tax will help the settlement grow faster. So it's a balancing act depending on what situation your campaign is looking like. There is also a scroll which breaks down how your province's income and public order is getting influenced by various factors like devastation, games in arena, etc. But the coolest feature is this, where you get to view your settlement in 3D and witness it as a living, breathing space. This feature is also useful for, say, a teacher wanting to show the classroom what it may have looked like. So it's adding more than just a game, but potential for educational content too. Although on YouTube nowadays, if there's one genre the history YouTuber community has had a stab at more times than Caesar endured, it's Roman history. The final tab of the city management scroll is the recruitment tab, where you build your boys to take over the world. As your cities grow and build, you'll have access to better troops and siege equipment. And if you right click on a unit, it will bring up the unit's description scroll, showing everything from unit upkeep, its defense and melee attack point, and its abilities. To show an example, we have the Roman faction's best infantry unit, the Urban Cohorts. They have a wide range of abilities which I'll showcase in the battle map section of this video. Each unit has a description that explains their strengths and weaknesses, and for an added bonus it even adds the history of the unit. So you can learn as you play. Brilliant. The average unit takes 1 turn to create, but some of your later elite units take 2 turns. After all, it's not like the Romans have overpowered units. As mentioned before, each faction has a unique or similar units: spearmen, swordsmen, cavalry, even flaming pigs. Wait, flaming pigs? Well, that's a terrifying sight. Wait, let me just Google check this real quick. Yep, it's got a historical basis. Those poor pigs. Apart from military units, you can also recruit agents, 3 types of them to be specific: assassins, diplomats and spies, each offering something unique to the player. The assassin, as you guessed, can kill people for you depending on his skill and the target's own attributes, so it's easy to kill a captain, but incredibly difficult to kill a faction leader, for example. The diplomat, in my opinion, is the best out of the 3 agents, as he acts as your broker for trade, map information and bribes. Sometimes it's easier to pay off your enemies to fight for you than face them yourself, and if you have enough cash and your diplomat has got a high skill level, it's easy to sway the enemy to your side, and depending on your faction, when you successfully bribe an enemy, some or all of the units may be under your command, or they just may disperse back into the wild. The diplomat can also let you establish trade with other factions, which brings economic growth. But the best feature is the demand option. If your faction has enough power, you can demand money and territory from your enemies, or even make them a vassal state. So it's always useful to have one around, especially in war. And finally, the spy. He has an enhanced line of vision, so is useful for scouting ahead and spotting enemies, or even sneaking into a settlement to get the details on the garrison, which is useful, as if you besiege a settlement with your man on the inside, there's a chance he'll open the gates for you on the battle map, saving you time and men from battering down the gates. I alluded to this next part already, but one thing that Rome Total War does great is the attributes and traits system. All of your characters, from family members in your faction to your diplomats and to your enemies, have traits. For your commander and governor, they have 3 main attributes that affect everything from how well they govern a city to how well they command on the battlefield. It breaks down to command, management, and influence. Command, as mentioned, is the ability to command on the battlefield, and plays into if you auto-resolve a battle on whether they'll win or how many troops they could lose, or if you're like me, who doesn't auto-resolve and normally fights every single battle, unless it's against a petty force. The command stars also affect your troops' attack and defense numbers. The management scroll is when your commander is placed in a city and they begin to govern it, and depending on how much management skill they have, it also adds how many bodyguards the commander has in his unit, as well as the amount of money the city makes each turn. Your faction leader's skill will be important, as they determine how many rebels can pop up on the map, which, if you have a poor leader, can lead to your empire dealing with many rebels blocking the roads and ports, which can lead to economic ruin if you're not careful. Now on to traits. Traits are what makes each member of your family different from one another. Some will be brilliant strategists, while others make Edward II of England look competent. Characters will start with existing traits, but will develop them over time depending on what they do, and some are specific to each faction. So for example, a character with the trait Gladiator Fan takes away 1 point of unrest from the populace, and over time that trait can change to Hero Worships Gladiators, taking away 3 points of unrest. So these traits add a real sense of depth that you want to improve certain commanders, and then some others you will just want to send out to sea to be forgotten about, or cannon fodder for your armies. Faction exclusive ones depend on the faction, so any Roman family member can acquire a Roman Senate office or ex-office, like the office of Quaestor, as playing as one of the Romans means there's a chance one of your characters will be elected to an office in the Senate. And the depth of the trait is crazy. The developers put a lot of time and effort adding loads in. There's even a document you can download, a 41-page document listing all the traits and their effects with a percentage of change. Absolute madness. The final part of your character's sheet is the retinue. Over the course of the game, certain characters will be part of your general's retinue, from a gladiator to a grain merchant. Each come with a bonus, and while some are generic, some are historical. That's right, you can end up with legends of history like Archimedes, who brings specific traits that are relevant to that historical figure's life. So for example, Archimedes brings +2 command when attacking a city, or +1 when defending one. So he's great to bring along with your main attacking force. My personal favourite one is Hieronymus, just for his description. A rather dull but well-regarded old historian, perhaps this is due to his ability to at least write some semblance of the truth. Mostly. That's definitely a dig at the chroniclers of history. Hovering over each one will tell you what they do, and the historical ones get funny descriptions. Just more love and effort from the developers, and another reason why this game is fantastic. The final table is an overview, where you can view your family tree, your victory conditions, diplomacy with other factions, and your finances. All basic stuff. Now, I want to show you the coolest part of the campaign map, the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And what Rome Total War does to them is giving them benefits to own. So for example, if you control the Colossus of Rhodes, your navy trade increases by 40%, which could dramatically increase your faction's revenue. While owning the Great Pyramid and Sphinx of Giza makes it so that the Egyptians are less likely to revolt against your faction. So if you're playing as a faction near these wonders, capturing one should be a top priority, and when you capture one, a lovely little movie plays showcasing the wonder, and your advisor will say this:
Your forces have captured one of the 7 wonders of the world. Capturing a wonder brings financial, morale, or religious benefits to your faction.
My personal favourite is the statue of Zeus. Sadly, only one ancient wonder still stands in our timeline, the pyramids. As each turn progresses and a new year starts, certain historical events will happen that will inform you of a development or change. You'll find this in the notifications on the left hand side. Some will tell of a new hand pump design, while others will make you aware of a new philosophical reasoning and logic. It doesn't affect gameplay, it's more world building, that time is moving on and new inventions are happening even in your own empire. Of course, there are some events which do affect your factions, like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions and flooding, which can be seen on the map. And of course, something we're all familiar with, plague. One event that changes the entire unit roster of the Roman factions is the Marian Reforms, which was a historical event that changed the Roman military structure. This event changes most of the units on the Roman roster and is unlocked after one Roman city builds an imperial palace. The campaign map is also an animated map, as you can see depending on the level of trade, ships moving to different ports or trade caravans moving along the road, which gives the player an indication of how well their trade is doing. Yet enemy armies such as rebels can damage trade as well. The longer a hostile army stays within a territory, a black and grey colour will emerge, showing the damage and devastation the army is doing. So it's best to take out rebel scum quickly. I make 1 or 2 armies consisting of heavy and light cavalry, as they move across the map the quickest, whereas armies with siege equipment will have less movement range, so it's important to plan your armies accordingly. Something empire building. The final part of the Imperial campaign map is to explain the movement and engagement your armies and navies will conduct when fighting or besieging a settlement, and different factors will change how each settlement can be besieged. A city with wooden walls will surrender quicker than one with huge stone walls, as stone walls will require more than just a simple battering ram to attack with. However, if your army just besieged the city and no other armies are coming to repel your army, you can wait up to 12 turns for the city to fall. Or you can construct 4 siege weapons, the battering ram to knock down the gates, a ladder to scale the walls 1 man at a time, or a siege tower which can drop troops quickly on the wall. Advanced siege towers can even fire at the enemy with scorpions on top. Finally, the sap point, my preferred way of breaking the walls down, where your troops will dig under the enemy's walls and crumble them like a sandcastle. As for engaging an enemy ship at sea, unfortunately, the first Total War game to bring in navy combat onto a battle map would be Empire Total War, but again this can be amended by playing Rome Total War 2 or by modding the remastered edition. As for the battle deployment scroll, it's quite simple. The bar in the middle represents the strength of the forces against each other, or you've got an option where you can retreat, but you can only retreat once. Auto-resolve to resolve the fight for you, and finally fight on the battle map. Speaking of the battle map, after the lovely silhouette loading screen with a quote from a historical person, the game opens up to a bird's eye view before zooming down to your army. From here, you can listen to your commander give a speech to his men, and what Rome Total War does brilliantly here is that depending on your general's traits, he'll make statements based around that trait. For example, if your general has the Mad Hat trait, he'll say something about the enemy having moon people on their side, but that Romans have nicer hats. My favourite is the Craven Coward speech.
My brave men! Victory shall be ours by grace of my inspired leadership. But this means I cannot risk myself in the front line. I must remain safe, guarded by you, my loyal warriors. This is not cowardice, oh no. It is prudence, the handmaiden of victory.
These types of speeches are exclusive to the Roman factions. The others just state a default generic statement to their troops, and as you heard, the general will state the troop numbers, the enemy faction's reputation, and various other observations, so it's worth listening to all of your commanders on the battlefield for unique dialogue, as it adds character development, and it's funny to listen to. After hearing a rousing speech, you can wait for a time if the weather is terrible, like heavy rain or fog, but only 3 times. After that, you can begin the deployment of your troops. Each unit has a unit card, and when you click on the unit, you'll be able to set the unit in various formations, or select a group and set a formation, ranging from a simple straight line to a 3-line formation, with infantry at the front and missile units in the centre and cavalry guarding the flanks. Certain units will have a unique ability. For example, the catapult can launch rocks or flaming projectiles, whereas barbarian units can invoke an enrage mechanic, giving them a boost for a time. You can set your unit to have a tight formation or a loose formation to avoid missile fire or to try and tank the impact of a cavalry charge. Guard mode makes it so your units will not chase after the enemy if they retreat. Fire at will is self-explanatory. You can even let the AI take control of certain units, although I don't recommend it. As you progress throughout the game, your units will be upgraded in terms of their weapon and armour, going from bronze, silver and gold. This is also reflected in their experience. As a unit fights, it gains experience, and a similar system applies, bronze, silver and gold. Archers have a unique ability to set fire to arrows, which are useful for damaging the morale of weak units and destroying siege equipment. If the enemy are taking far too long to get to you, the speed of time can be sped up, although be careful because you don't want to speed up time and then realise you haven't set your units up in time for the enemy's attack. If you are fighting multiple enemies, what Rome Total War does is it sets them as reinforcements. But what's interesting, if your PC is not up to scratch, or the game thinks your PC cannot run the amount of units on screen, it will state that your enemy or your allies' reinforcements have not arrived yet. Of course, you can use this to your advantage so you'll win an increasingly difficult battle. The terrain is based on where you are on the campaign map. So if your armies are on the plains of Italy, you'll get flat terrain with some hills, or if you're near the mountains in Greece, you'll be fighting in the mountains. Terrain is a very useful factor in winning a difficult battle. If you can get the higher ground, you're more likely to win. Missile units have a bonus on the higher terrain, their range gets bigger and they can fire on the enemy from a greater distance. The same applies to missile armed infantry units like the legions of Rome, as they throw a pilum at the enemy when in range. Certain units can hide in the forest for an ambush. The old hammer and anvil technique is my favourite. Rome Total War's units follow a sort of rock, paper, scissors situation. Light cavalry beat light skirmishers, spearmen beat horsemen, while heavy infantry beat spearmen, etc. So it's best to build an army with a mixture of troops, or just recruit all cataphracts or elephants and stampede the enemy. Right-clicking on a unit will bring up its unit scroll, telling you everything you need to know. Some units are so unique that the advisor actually straight up tells you how to beat this specific unit. The interesting one, and the slightly more haunting one, is the Screeching Women unit from the Germanic faction. Just listen to this.
The presence of their women is inspiring the enemy to fight harder. Some may think it dishonorable, but if they insist on interfering in men's business, they must accept the consequences.
I don't know what to say about that. Moving on, but some of these mechanics and units go out the window when it comes to siege battles. Siege battles in Rome Total War can be incredibly frustrating, but they can also be fun and come in a variety of different scenarios. As mentioned before, you can starve the enemy into submission, but they may sally forth and try and repel you in one last desperate bid. If you're attacking first, you'll have to deal with the towers on the wall. These can only be taken if your troops control a part of the wall. But first, you'll need to get inside, and depending on what siege equipment you bring or construct and the level of the walls, it can be an easy task, or it can be a fight at the gates of hell. Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more. A wooden wall is no challenge, but a Roman epic stone wall with ballista towers, ouch, you're going to lose a lot of men. You can equip any troops apart from cavalry and elephants to a siege weapon. A battering ram will try and break down the enemy gates. However, at the highest level of walls and defences, you will need a lot of them, as they will mostly catch fire and break. And you'll need to use your heaviest infantry, as light infantry will get destroyed by the time they reach the gate. Siege towers can come in a few different types. The basic one that will drop troops directly onto the enemy's walls. Later ones can be equipped with ballista, which can be useful in clearing the defenders on the wall, as when the defenders are off a portion of the wall in relation to the tower, that wall is captured and the tower will stop firing at your troops, so this needs to be a top priority. And ladders, which are self-explanatory. Sap points are my preferred way of assaulting a city, creating multiple entry points for your forces to swarm in, digging a tunnel under the walls and collapsing them, which can take out some of the enemy's troops stationed on the wall. And the final siege weapon is the onager or catapult, which can take out walls quite easily depending on how many you have. Just be careful not to set the settlement on fire unless you're a depraved person who enjoys burning things. You can capture a settlement by routing or defeating all enemy troops or capturing the city centre and holding it for a certain time, as the enemy will always retreat here and fight to the death. So trying to take a large city will result in casualties on both sides, and when you take the city, you can occupy it with minimal damage, sack the city for more money but damage the buildings, or exterminate, cutting the population significantly. Dark choices, which can affect the traits of your commander. So, will your general be seen as a disgruntled occupier or a butcher? Historical battles. As we know, there are plenty of armchair historians, but then have you thought, I wonder if I could command an army as well as Hannibal Barca did? Then the historical battle mode is for you. In this mode, you can command an army at a set point in time, from the Battle of Lake Trasimir to the Siege of Sparta. The game gives a short description in the text box, which will set the scene for you. The next screen gives you the layout of the troops you'll be commanding. You'll always play as the faction that historically lost, so it creates an alternative historical event. The next part, I will let Centurion Marcus tell you about, one of my favourite historical battles, Lake Trasimir.
Rome is not the only power rising along the shores of the Mediterranean. Another people, the Carthaginians, have imperial ambitions. Their empire is growing in Spain even as the Romans secure the Italian peninsula. For Rome, Caius Flaminius has been sent north to deal with the Carthaginian problem. And it is a problem. Hannibal Barca, the greatest Carthaginian general ever, is on the march.
Units, move out!
He swore an oath to his dying father that he would never give the Romans a moment's peace. Hannibal has already kept his oath at Trebia. After that victory, he forced the Romans back onto the defensive. Now, with his army at Lake Trasimene, Hannibal plans to lure another Roman army into a brutal ambush. He has every reason to hope the Romans will cooperate in their own deaths. The Romans quickly moved to meet the obvious threat from Hannibal's men. Unaware of the danger, Flaminius orders his leading units to attack. Hannibal springs his trap. His waiting troops are ordered to attack the unprepared Romans. The Carthaginian plan is to sweep down on the Roman flank and drive their enemies into the icy waters of Lake Trasimene. Only courage and Roman discipline will save the Roman army. The legionaries must turn and face the oncoming Carthaginians and keep themselves from being surrounded.
Each historical battle provides a unique challenge to the player. Of course, the hardest one, in my opinion, is the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. I have never completed that battle. However, as your troops get slaughtered in that battle, you can at least enjoy the music, as Rome Total War has one of the best soundtracks in video game history. Every song is crafted to fit a theme. As soon as you order your troops forward, a bombastic tune plays called, appropriately, Warrior's March. The composer, Jeff Van Dyke, has done an amazing job creating such rich, engaging music. Jeff goes into detail on his website about the production of the music. I was inspired by Hans Zimmer's soundtrack for the movie Gladiator. I hired the guitar expertise of Saki Kazka on guitar and mandolin, and my wife Angela on vocals. One of the most popular songs on the soundtrack is Divinitas. Angela wrote the lyrics and I wrote the music. Even if you don't play the game, it's worth listening to just the music if you are researching or studying. As I was writing this script, I was listening to the soundtrack. Jeff Van Dyke also has his own YouTube channel where he posts his music, so go and subscribe. Have you ever wanted to see 1,000 war elephants go up against 10,000 war dogs? Then the custom battle is for you. You can play as every single faction apart from the rebels, and you can choose any map from the British grasslands to the Syrian flats. Choices are set battles or siege battles. Some maps are strictly for siege battles, such as Rome. Or you can add a settlement onto a normal map and choose which faction type settlement will be in play, setting the weather and time of day to create your ideal battle. The next screen is the player selection, where you can have up to 8 different factions fighting for a truly epic showdown with limited or unlimited funds. The next screen is the army build, where you pick your units as well as set their experience and the level of their weapons and armour. My favourite faction to play as in this mode are the Seleucids. I'll give a quick overview of each faction. Roman factions. They have the most diverse and powerful infantry in the game, with good cavalry but limited spearmen being their only weakness. Easy game playing as the Romans. Macedon. Weak units with only 2 decent elite units, the companion cavalry and the pikemen. Their cavalry is the best looking in the game, however. Egypt. Decent roster of units, pikemen and archers are excellent with chariots to accompany them, which are powerful units to unleash behind enemy lines. I don't understand why they don't have elephants in their roster. The Seleucid Empire, my personal favourite, powerful roster of units with amazing pikemen, and they're able to recruit the basic Roman legion infantry along with powerful cavalry and elephants. A truly versatile army to be made with these guys. Carthage, decent spearmen but weak sword infantry and appalling cavalry, but they can recruit armoured elephants. Parthia, terrible infantry, one of the worst in the game, but the cataphracts really help them stand out. Pontus, semi-decent roster, great pikemen with the bronze shields, good cavalry with a bonus of chariots, similar to the Seleucids. Gaul has one of the best archer units in the game. They can hide anywhere on the battle map. Infantry is good, with the chosen swordman, and cavalry is a bit limited, but they can still recruit heavy cavalry for a hammer and anvil strategy. Germania. They have some of the most unique units in the game. the Screeching Ladies, which boosts troops' morale and attack power for friendly units, and the most bonkers unit in the game, Berserkers. Look at this.
This is no longer a battle, this is a hunt. No, a coward chase.
Crazy units. They also have decent cavalry and archers. The Britons, similar to Gaul and Germania, decent infantry, but the Britons have the highest damaging skirmish unit in the game, the Head Hurdlers. Their missile damage does 17 points of damage. Grim. They can also field chariots. Armenia has one of the best spear units in the game, as well as the based legion infantry with heavy cavalry. Limited range units, however. Dacia, similar units to Gaul, but they have a unique unit called the Flexmen, who deal great damage to heavily armoured troops. Average roster, however. Greek States, amazing attacking pikemen in the Spartan hoplites, but terribly weak cavalry. I don't see why they didn't give them better cavalry, considering Macedon, but oh well. Heavy Pautists are another unique unit. Numidia, the worst faction in the game, period. Every unit they have is weak compared to others. Their version of the Legion troops is the worst in the game. And their cavalry is just sad. Again, they can't even recruit elephants, only the mercenary version. Scythians. They have 2 infantry units. Both are poor, but their strength is in their cavalry, as they have some of the best light horsemen in the game, as well as deadly horse archers. They're hard to fight in a wide open plain. Spain, their Bull Warriors is one of the finest heavy infantry that predates the Legion in throwing a weapon before charging. Unfortunately, that is their only decent unit. And finally, Thrace. They're so limited in troops, basic pikemen and weak cavalry. However, one unit exclusively to them is the Bastani, one of the best heavy infantry units. Most factions have decent units that can make each battle play differently. Custom battle is a fine way to build up your prowess as an armchair general. The DLCs. Now Rome Total War has 2 DLCs, Barbarian Invasion and Alexander. I'm not going to explain each one as they both deserve their own videos on why they're great, but I'll offer a brief overview. Barbarian Invasion takes place during the end days of the Western Roman Empire, adding a new campaign with various difficulties depending on the faction you play as. For example, playing as the Huns is relatively easy, but try to play as the Western Roman Empire is essentially hard mode. Certain factions can also migrate to new places, essentially turning into a massive army, new units, as well as the ability to fight at night on the battle map. And during a river battle, units can cross the river rather than just trying to cross the bridge, yet if they stay too long in the water, they will start to drown. Barbarian Invasion is a great game to play if you completed the vanilla Rome Total War campaign and fancy new challenges. One final thing on Barbarian Invasion, if you play as the Western Roman Empire and listen to the advisor at the start of the turn, she will say how absolutely screwed you are as playing as the Western Roman Empire. Listen to this.
You have chosen to lead the Western Roman Empire. Now you're in trouble. By this time, the Empire has faced centuries of excess, corruption, threatening barbarians, and religious unrest. And now the stress is showing. In fact, it could be said that not only death, but also pestilence, famine, and war are busily rampaging across the known world even as I speak. As the campaign begins, you'll see that your lands are in a parlous state, even without any overt external enemies. You can turn things around, but you'll need to quell internal dissent, build up the legions, and stop barbarians migrating into your lands. This, as you might expect, is not as easy as it sounds.
Now, Rome Total War Alexander focuses solely on the campaign of Alexander the Great and recreates it for you, where your goal is to take 30 settlements within 100 turns. The historical battles are also tweaked and given an in-depth storytelling by legendary actor Brian Blessed, who narrates the campaign as well. Just listen to his amazing voice.
It is 331 BC. Alexander's campaign against the Persian Empire is now in its third year, and has brought the young king many victories. Alexander continues to lead his army deep into unfamiliar Middle Eastern territory. He is still only 25 years old. His scouts have brought him reports of a Persian force close by. It is King Darius, out to avenge his defeat at Issus. He has gathered around him a larger army than Alexander has ever faced before, comprised of troops from all corners of the Persian Empire. Darius has deployed his army across a wide plain, and has specially flattened the field of engagement to create ideal terrain for his chariots. Darius has lured Alexander to his chosen battleground, and his army far outnumbers Alexander's. The odds would appear to be stacked against the young pretender. But Alexander is confident. He knows his troops are superior. He has a plan to exploit the weaknesses of both the Persian army and its commander. Alexander suspects that Darius lacks personal courage and knows that the superstitious Persian troops are unlikely to continue to fight on without their king. If Alexander can chase Darius into flight, as he did at Issus, the Persian army will likely fall into disarray. However, Darius is heavily guarded, and it will be difficult to break through to him. Alexander must outmaneuver or break through Darius's battle line in order to get to the king. Should he fail to rout Darius, the Persian army will march forward at full strength and engulf the Macedonians.
Gods, I wish my voice sounded like that. Both DLCs are fantastic and are packaged with the main game whenever you buy it on Steam. There is no perfect game, but if you were to ask me that question in 2005, I would have said Rome Total War. Yes, I know it's aged a bit, but it's got the fundamentals right. Any age-related criticisms can be negated by just playing the remastered version, which looks phenomenal and retains the charm of the original. What I wanted to do in this video was just showcase how good and rich the game was for me when I first played it, and the sense of joy I got by playing it for hundreds of hours as different factions doing different things each playthrough. I definitely believe that Rome Total War added to the revival of ancient Greek and Roman culture in the public conscience. And with how prevalent the internet plays in our lives now, I believe the game inspired people like me to research and explore ancient Greek and Roman history. Even though in some corners of the internet, the fetishization of Roman history can be a bit cringy, nevertheless, it's important to research history and to understand it. And what I love about Rome Total War is that for me, it was a launching pad into my continued love of history, and for that, I will be eternally grateful. Thank you for watching my video essay / review of Rome Total War, Drink. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. The original video was meant to be an April Fool's joke, but the joke was on me as I caught COVID. Obviously, this video was a one-time thing, and I'll go back to making historical content soon, but forgive me for indulging on something I really wanted to create.